Hello everyone, I know for most of you JavaScript still feels confusing, but don't worry, today we are going to throw the theory out of the window by building 5 amazing JavaScript mini projects. These projects that we are going to build, we are not just going to use the simple alert box projects. This is a real project like the one that you are seeing them here. This is one of the 5 projects that we are going to build. The second project will be a simple to do application where we are going to ask the user to enter the details here, any item, and then when they click this add button, it will be added to the list. In case if the user decided to delete that item, they can click on this delete icon so that it can disappear. There is this other project that we have where we are going to ask the user to guess a number between 1 to 31, and then we are going to display few numbers here in this box, and then we are going to ask the user to check if the number that they are thinking is part of this list or not. In case if they say yes, they are going to press yes. In case, let's say for example, the number that they were thinking between 1 to 31 is not appearing in this box, then they are going to say no. We are going to give them 5 steps or 5 chances to say whether yes or no. Based on that one, we are going to guess the number that they were thinking between 1 to 31. This is another project that we are going to build. And then we are also going to build a simple digital clock using JavaScript. This is going to be the very basic project using JavaScript. It will help you understand the very basics of JavaScript. This is one of the projects that we are going to build. And then we are going to build this final project. This project, I'm going to call it as firecracker animation. This is going to be purely using JavaScript. Let me show you what this project is going to do. When I click on this button, this is what is going to display. This is amazing, isn't it? So these are the 5 projects that we are going to build in this particular tutorial. I hope you are excited and ready to learn with me. Now let's get started with our first project. Hello everyone, let's build a mind reader game using JavaScript. This particular mind reader game will have 5 yes or no questions and magically guess the number that they were thinking of between 1 to 31. Let me show you. So even now you can guess any number between 1 to 31 and see if that number is found here. If you say that yes, it's here, then click yes. If it is not here, click no. Yes, no, yes. So we are going to give them 5 chances. At the end of the 5th attempt, we are going to display the number that they were guessing, just like this. So this is exactly what we are going to build in this JavaScript tutorial. I'm sure that you are excited, but don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel. Let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do them here in my text editor is to create the basic HTML boilerplate. Here I'm going to have the basic HTML. So let's say for example I want to have the H1. I want to, since it's a guessing game, so I want to have this brain icon. So for that, press Windows colon button on your Windows operating system. So maybe here type brain to come here. Now we can type anything that you want to have. So I'm going to say something like this, and then I also want to have a paragraph. Now the next thing is, if I go back, there is this div where we are displaying some random numbers between 1 to 31. For the same, I'm going to create a div, and then the next step is to have these 2 buttons beneath this div. So for the same, I want to create another div. Inside I'm going to have 2 buttons. One has a label as yes, other one has a label as no. And then at the end of the 5th attempt, we have to display this message to the user. So for that, I'm going to create a H2 so that the results can be displayed like the way that you're seeing them here. Let me give an ID, something like this. This is my basic HTML. Let's open this one with the browser. This is what we are going to see. I also want to add a bit of styling to this particular page. I'm not going to teach you how to work with CSS because our intention is to learn JavaScript. My intention is to teach you JavaScript. I have added some very basic CSS styling to this particular page. As you can see them here, initially I removed the margin and padding. For the body section, these are the styling that I have. For the H1, this is what I have. For the paragraph, this is what I have. For the card that I created, especially for that particular div with an ID card, this is what I am going to have. and when I hover on that card, so basically when I go here, this is a card, when I hover on this one, there is a nice movement here, right? So for that I have added this particular part, this transform property, and then we also have those two buttons, one for yes, other one for no. For that, this is a styling that I have. When I hover on the button, there is a bit of styling, and then when you want to display the results, there is this styling that I want to use. This is a basic CSS. I hope you can able to do this one on your own. So let's go back to our original design. Let's just refresh, and this is what you are going to see. After refreshing the page, this is what you are going to see. Now it's time for us to work with JavaScript. So for that, let's go to the HTML. I want to create a script tag. Inside the script tag, remember, we want to give 5 attempts to the user. For the same, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create that 5 set by using the variable const. I'm going to call this one as a sets. Initially, I'm going to set this one to an empty array. Okay, so we start with an empty array called set. This will eventually hold 5 different lists of numbers. Each list will be shown to the user one by one, and they will answer it. If your number is in this list, then if it is there, then they will click yes or no based on that question. Now the next thing is to build these 5 sets of number using nested for loop. So for that, I'm going to have this for loop. So now let me explain you what we have here. We have this particular for loop here. Basically, we are going to create 5 sets of questions. Each set is linked to a specific position in a binary number. Let's say for example, ones, twos, fours place, and etc. So this line of let set is equals to empty array. This is basically used to create a temporary array to hold numbers for this particular set. And then this other for loop that we have is basically it checks every number from 1 to 31 to see if it is belongs to the current set. And this particular if condition that we have them here, this is basically the part of the magic behind the mind reading. It checks whether the ith bit of number j is turned on. If it is, that means the number should be in this particular set. Let's say for example, in set 0, when I value is 0, it includes all the odd numbers. Bit 0 is 1, something like that. And then in set 1, I is equals to 0, which means it includes numbers like 2, 3, 6, 7, etc. and so on. So this particular step that you see them here, set.push j, is basically check whether it is true. If it is true, we add that number to the current set. So this line here is basically after building one set, we store it in the sets array. That's what it means. So basically at this point in time, what we have is sets is an array. We are going to have set of elements which are set 0, set 1, set 2, set 3 and set 4. Each set is ready to be shown to the user in that block, in this particular box. That's what it means. Okay. Now the next thing is to prepare to store the user answer. When the user clicks yes, we need to store the answer. When they click no, we need to store the answer. Isn't it so? For that, what we are going to do, I'm going to create another variable. Maybe after this, let me create another variable to store the answer. So I'm going to call this variable as answers. Initially, I'm going to set it to an empty array. I also want to create another variable. For the current set, I'm going to set it to 0. Let me explain you about these two lines that I have added here. Answers array, this is basically going to store the user's yes or no answers. If they say yes, we have to say true. If they say no, we have to say false. That's what it means. So basically this particular variable keeps track of which question we are on now. So it basically starts at 0 and increases by 1 each time when the user answers. I hope this makes sense. Now the next thing is to display the current set to the user. We are going to have 5 sets. We need to display the current set to the users just like the way that you see them here. For that, I'm going to include this JavaScript method. So let's say for example here, I'm going to create a function. The name of the function can be anything. Let's say in this case, I'm going to call this one as a display set. So within this function, I'm going to display the current set for each item. So let me just write the code, then I will explain you. Now let me explain you what is in here. So I created a function. So basically within this function, what we are trying to do, we are trying to have this if condition. Let's say for example, we are not yet done with all the 5 sets, because we are going to give 5 sets to each user for them to say whether the number is found in that set or not, right? It gets the current set from the set's current set. That's the reason why we have got this current set. Where is it coming from? Actually is this one. And then we are trying to get the length of that particular set. Where is this set is coming from? Is this one. What did I say about this one? Is basically get the set 0, set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4, right? And then what it does, it converts them into a string with commas. That's the reason why we have this one. It converts them into a strings with commas, and then we are trying to display the same details inside the card that we created. I hope you remember this is an ID for this particular div that we created because we want to display those numbers in there. I hope this makes sense. Now what is next? We need to handle when all the 5 questions are done, isn't it so? For that I'm going to have this else statement. So this else statement is the one which is going to handle when all 5 questions are done. So for that, within this else statement I'm going to write the logic. So what it does here is simply, let's say for example, we have already asked 5 questions and got 5 answers from the user. It's time to calculate the user's number. We are going to give them the number that they were guessing. So for that, we are using the variable name called guess. Initially, we are assigning it to a 0 so that it won't hold any garbage value. And then in the next step, we have got basically answers.length will give you the length of the answer. So here we have got this particular if condition where we say answers I guess plus equals to 2 times I. So which simply means if the user said yes, let's say for example we are giving them 5 options, isn't it so? So let's say for example if the user said yes, then we add 2 to the power 0. When they say yes, we say 2 to the power 0. When they say again yes, 2 to the power 1. When they again say yes, we say 2 to the power 2, 2 to the power 3, 2 to the power 4, something like that. Then if they say no, we just count it as 0. So we just get 2 to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4 only when they press yes. So this is basically going to work is because each set corresponds to a place in a binary number system. That's how come this is going to work. I hope this makes sense. Right now the next thing is, let's say for example we have given the 5 chances to the user. After that, I'm sure that if you could notice, let's go back 1 2 3 4 5, that particular div has disappeared, isn't it so? We need to make sure that that particular step has disappeared, and then instead of that particular div we are going to display this message together with this message. For that, what do we have to do? We have to make sure that that particular div is hidden. For that, we are going to add this particular line of code here. What is the name of that div? I think we have an ID name called card, right? So we are going to say document.getElement by ID card. Then we are just going to say style.display is equals to none. That is document.getElement by ID style.display is none. Basically, we are making sure that that div is no longer displaying on the screen, because at that point in time user has already used all his 5 chances. That's what it means. Now what is next? We need to display this result, isn't it so? Your number is, and then the number that the user has guessed, we are going to display this. So for us to display this message, where do we want to display this message? For the same, I'm sure that you still remember we have got this h2. So now we are going to target this one, and because this is where we are going to put the result. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm picking that h2 text content. I want to put the content. This is simply a smiley, and then your number is, I'm using the backtick. Remember, what is this guess here is simply this particular variable that we created. So at this point in time we could have already guessed the answer for that one. I hope this makes sense. I think we are almost done. So what is next? So basically the last step of this particular project now is to, when the user clicks yes or no, how is it going to work? So for that, basically we are going to create another function. Let's say for example, I'm going to create this other function to handle the answer, is because this one is basically based on yes or no type, right? So I'm creating this function handle answer, I have this function name called handle answer. Now I need to create this function, isn't it so that this particular function can be executed. So I'm going to invoke this function, or I'm going to call this function from the buttons that I created up there. Remember, I have got two of these buttons. So let me create this function just within these buttons using an event name called onClick for both of these. And then here I'm going to pass the value. When the user enters yes, I'm going to pass this one as a true. When the user enters no, I'm going to pass this one as a false. Now this true and false are the value to this particular function. It stores the user response either true or false into this answers array. After storing that one into an answers array, it moves to the next set by increasing the current set. From there, we are going to call this display set again to show the next set, which is the final result. I hope this makes sense. Now what is next? Since this is a function here, we have to call this function. How are we going to call this function? Just the normal way. We just call them here. I think we are done. So this particular for loop here checks every number from 1 to 31 to see if it belongs to the current set. And this if condition here, this is basically part of the magic behind the mind reading, because it checks whether the ith bit of number j is turned on. If it is turned on, that means the number should be in the set. That's what it means. And then if it is on the set, then what are we going to do? Then this particular line, if the check is true, we add that number to the current set. Otherwise, here we are going to say after building one set, we store it into the sets array, like set 0, set 1, set 2. Every set will be stored into this particular sets array. And then we also created these two empty set for the answers array, because at the moment we don't have an answer. Then we are setting the current state to 0. And then we have this particular function to display the set in that particular div with an ID card. So this current set would get the length of the set. In this case, the length of the set is 5. It's because we are going to give 5 chances. That's the reason why sets.length will return 5 as a value. So here we are going to display all those numbers from the current set. Then we are going to display them like a string. And then this else is an important part of this whole project. So here this particular else, if you have already asked 5 questions and got the 5 answers from the user, it's time to calculate the user's number. So we use a variable name called guess here to hold the final results. So here, especially this particular if condition that you see them here, let's say for example, if the user said yes, and then we add 2 to the power 0. Every time when the user said yes, we add 2 to the power 0. Let's say for example, from the set 1, if the user said yes, then it's 2 to the power 0. What is the 2 to the power 0? Is 1, right? Then in the second set, when the user said no, then we counted as 0. Let's say for example, in the third set, when the user said yes, it will be 2 to the power 2. 2 to the power 2 is 4. The first set was true, so 1 plus 4 is 5. Let's say the next one, the user says no, then it will be 0. Then the last one, if the user says yes, then 2 to the power 3 is 8. Then we add 1 plus 4 plus 8. Then let's say the last one, the user said no, then it will be 0. So the number would be probably 13. That's how come we are going to calculate. Once we guessed it, we are making sure that those numbers are no longer displaying, and then we are displaying the number that we guessed. So now this is a function handle answer is going to work based on the button click. So when I click on the button that has yes as a label, it goes true as a value. When I click on the button that has a no as a label, it goes as a false. So based on these two values, this particular function is going to handle the current state, and then it's going to display the set of results. And then finally we are just calling this particular function so that we can be able to see the result. I hope everything is clear. Let's see whether our code is working or not by running the code. Wow, the numbers are not displaying here. What did we miss? Maybe we have missed something here. I think the reason why that we are not able to see the set of elements there is because instead of sets, I've said set here. So because this is where we are pushing this set of numbers, again there is a mistake here. We were trying to have the numbers between 1 to 31, isn't it? So I'm going to say 1, here it has to be 31. I think that could be the reason why that we are not seeing the set of numbers there. Let me save and go back to check. I think now it is working. So I'm going to say yes, no, yes, no, yes. Now the number, yes, it is actually giving me the right answer. I was thinking of 21. It is giving me 21. I know that you feel confused, but it's a simple one. I think when you just practice, you can able to crack this one. If you need an interesting videos like this, do not forget to subscribe the channel and hit the like button. Thank you. Hello guys, let's create this firecracker animation using JavaScript. I'm going to open my text editor. Let me create a basic HTML boilerplate, and then here I'm going to just have an h2. Let me copy this same thing from the actual design, and I'm going to put it here. Let me create a button. Let me save. Let me open this one with my text editor. This is how it's going to look like. The original design has got some basic styling. I'm going to add those basic styling to my design. So I'm going to my head section. So here, so I have added some basic styling for the body section, H2 as well as button. When I hover on the button, I have added some basic style. There is nothing much here. After adding this basic styling, let's have a look how it's going to look like. I think now it looks better. Now let's get into the JavaScript so that we can create this firecracker animation. So for that, let me open my text editor. We are going to work with the JavaScript. So I'm going to create a JavaScript file by using the script tag. I'm going to add an event here on click, because when I click on that button, that's when I want to invoke that firecracker animation. Let me give a name for this particular function. Inside, I'm going to create that function. Make sure this name matches with the one that you have. So the first thing that I'm going to do them here is to create a for loop, and then this for loop I'm going to use the normal traditional for loop. I'm going to say let. I've created this for loop. Basically I want this particular for loop to be executed 40 times. Inside this for loop, let's say for example I want to create a div. For us to create a div or any HTML element, I'm sure that you know we use the method name called document.create element, and then the element that I want to create them here is a div. After creating this element, I want to store this one into a variable. You can give any name. I'm going to give a name as particle. Now I have created a div element for my HTML document inside the JavaScript. The next thing that I'm going to do here is to add some class name to this variable. So to do that, we usually say particle dot class name, and then you give a name of the class. Let's say for example, even the class name here is going to be particle. So basically we are dynamically adding the class name to this particular div that we created. So for this particular class name, I want to add some style. So this particle here, I'm simply referring to the balls that you see them here. These balls that you see them here, this is what I'm referring to when I say particle. So I want to define the width and height of the particle. Let's say 20 pixel width, height is 20 pixel. I want the shape to be like a ball, isn't it so? So for that I'm going to use the border radius as 50%. Let me save. I've added a bit of styling to this particle. Now what is next? We need to add this random color, because at this point in time our balls did not have any color. So I'm going to add some random color using HSL color model. When I use this HSL color model, I'm going to give each particle with a bright unique color for a visual variety. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a variable name as color. I'm going to use this backtick 2 times. Here I'm going to use the hue in HSL color model. So for the same, I'm going to use HSL. Make sure that there is no space when you're adding this parenthesis. If you give a space here, it won't work. So make sure that there is no space here. Inside, I'm going to use math.random function is because I want to create some random color, isn't it so? So for us to work with the random color or maybe any random number, JavaScript has a function name called math.random. So for that I'm going to use the $, pair of curly braces. Here I'm going to use the function name called math.random. So this math.random, I'm going to say times 360. Here I'm going to pass two values. One is going to be 100%, other one is going to be 50%. So what is this 100% here means? Is basically this 100% here, it simply means we are going to have the fully vibrant color. This 50% that you see them here will give you the medium brightness. That's what it means. So this will basically add the random color to the particle that we created. In this case, the particle that we created is going to be looking like a ball. It's because of this border radius. Now if you could go back to the original design, everything is happening from this point, right? So we need to find out the horizontal and vertical positions. For the same, what I am going to do to identify the horizontal offset so that we can splash this particular bow. To do that, what I am going to do, I am going to use let's create a variable, and then again I am going to use the math.random function. I am going to say minus 0.5. Here I am going to say times 1000 plus pixel. Let me tell you what is this means. So this is simply means we calculate the random horizontal offset from the center between this 1000 here. We are trying to calculate the center between negative 500 pixel and positive 500 pixel. When you put 1000, it's basically ranging between negative 500 pixel to positive 500 pixel. That's what it means. So when you say math.random minus 0.5, so when you say math.random, it simply means it's ranging between 0 to 1. Since we are saying negative 5, it simply means negative 0.5 to positive 0.5. That's what it means. So this is basically for the horizontal. Now we also have to calculate the vertical position. So for that, I'm going to copy this and paste them beneath this one. So instead of variable x, I'm going to use the variable name as y. So this one is for the horizontal offset, this one is for the vertical offset. The next thing is we need to add a background color to the particle that we created. So this one, we are just assigning a color. So this color variable here will give us a random color. So now what do we have to do? We have to assign this random color to the particle that we created. How do we do that? Particle is the name of the variable. If you want to add a color to that one, how would you do that? In CSS, we say style dot background color. Where are we getting the background color from? This color variable, because this color variable would give us an access to the random color. I hope this makes sense. Now as you can see them here, we need to calculate the middle of this screen. When I say middle of this screen, from the horizontal as well as from the vertical. So basically we are trying to find out the middle of the screen width and middle of the screen height. So for that, what I am going to do here, I am simply going to say particle dot style dot left equals, we want to find out the middle of the screen width. For that, we are going to use the built-in method name called window dot inner width divided by 2, because we are trying to find out the middle of the screen width, and then we are going to add them with the pixel. So this one will calculate the middle of the screen width. We also have to calculate the middle of the screen height. So for the same, instead of width, let's change this one to a height. Now this one will calculate the middle of the screen height. I hope this makes sense. Then the next thing is we need to add some animation so that when we press on that button, we see that thing will start splashing. For the same, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the CSS here in JavaScript name called set property. How do we do that? We say particle dot, we want to set some styling. What styling do you want to set? In this case, I want to set the property. Here you can pass anything. So but in this particular case, I'm going to create a global variable. For us to create a global variable, we use a single code. Here I'm going to say, so dash dash x, this is for the horizontal offset. So I'm going to give a value as x. For the vertical offset, I'm just going to change the name of the variable from x to y. I hope this makes sense. Now what is next? We have to work with these global variables when you create an animation. Do we have any animations here? At the moment there is no animation. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say, let's create some animation. Give a name for the animation. Let's say I'm going to say explode, and then let's say I'm going to just give some 0.75 ease out forwards. Since I created this animation, I need to work with that animation. For that, I'm going to use the keyframes function in CSS. What is the name of the animation? Is explode. Pick the name of the animation, put them here. So inside this animation function, I'm going to use the to. Inside the to, I'm going to say transform, and then here I want to translate. Since I have created those two global variables, I'm going to use them here. Var, what is that global variable for the horizontal offset? Is x, isn't it so? In the same way, I have created one for the vertical offset, which is dash dash y. I also want to have some scale. So for that, I'm going to say scale. This scale can be anything. So let me just say 0.7. And then I want to set the opacity to 0. That's it. So we are working with an animation. Now what is next? We want that balls to be displayed on a web browser, on a JavaScript DOM, isn't it so? So everything here, everything is about this particle. Particle has a shape, size, background color, and everything. Now we need to bring this particle to the web browser, to the JavaScript DOM. How do we do that? It's a simple step. We want to take this particle to the HTML. For us to take this particle to the HTML, what do? We say document dot, we want to take it to the body section of the HTML dot, we are going to say append child. Now what do you want to append? The same particle, so that it can appear on the web browser. Let me save, let's go back, let's refresh, let's click here. I think there is something wrong. I think we missed something. Let's go back and check to find out where we went wrong. So everything here seems to be okay. I think the position has to be set. For the particle, let's set the position to absolute. Let me save. Let's go back and refresh. When I click, I think the way that this firecracker is working is not the same as this one. So for that, what did I miss? Let me just go back. Oh yeah, for us to calculate the middle of the screen height, here we have to say top, not left. No wonder we're not seeing the result. Let me save. Let's go back and refresh to check. Sorry, this one. Let's refresh. Let me click. So when I click, I think there is something wrong with an animation. So let's go back to the code and check. I've left the yes here. That's the reason why it was not showing properly. So let me save and refresh the page. I'm sure that now you can able to see the firecracker animation has worked. It's a simple one, but a unique one from the ones that you have been doing using the alert box. I hope this tutorial was useful and then you have learned something. We are trying to assign some random color to the balls, and then we are trying to calculate the middle of the screen width and height, and then we are just playing with some CSS to have that animations. That's it guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, you are free to ask me through comment sections. In case if you liked this video, do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome to this JavaScript tutorial video series. In this particular tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to create this simple to-do application using JavaScript. This particular to-do application will have two parts. One is an input box, another one is a button. When you enter something into the input box, when you click on the button add, the list item will be added. So let's say for example, here I'm going to say subscribe, and then when I click this button add, this particular thing will be added to the list. In case if you want to delete any of the items from this list, you can simply utilize this delete button so that you can be able to delete that particular item. So this is exactly what you are going to learn in this particular tutorial. I hope you are ready. Let's get started. I'm going to open my text editor. Here I'm going to have my basic HTML boilerplate. Within this HTML, I want to have a div with a class name called to-do container. So let me say div. I want to give a class for this one. The name of the class can be anything. In this case, I'm just going to give a name as to-do container. This is my main div. Inside the div, I'm going to have a h2. For this particular h2, this is a title that I want to have. So let me just copy the whole part from the design, and then I'm going to paste them here. If you go back to the design, this one has got another two parts. One is an input box, another one is a button. For me to have these two parts, I'm going to create another div. The class name for this one is input section, and then within this div I'm going to have the input type. I'm going to say this is a text. I also want to give a, let me get rid of this one. I want to give a placeholder, so let me just give an ID. In this case, name of the ID can be anything, but in this case I'm going to use name of the ID as a task input. I also want to have a button, so for this button the label is add. I want to give a class name for this button, just to style. I think that's it. Let me save and open this one with my browser. This is how it's going to look like. Now the next step is to add some bit of CSS so that this particular page can look better than the way that is looking now. I'm not going to teach you how to work with CSS because this tutorial is purely for JavaScript, but I have already prepared some CSS for this particular project. I'm going to copy paste that CSS. I'm sure that you can able to work with the CSS on your own, but if you need the same CSS that I'm using, you can also pause the video and copy the CSS. So here is the CSS that I have added. There is nothing much here. Basically I'm doing something for the body section. I've selected that first div with the class name called to do container. I'm also adding some style to the h2. For the input section, this is for the another div that I have inside. This is for the input. When I focus on the input, I have added some style. This is for the button, and when I hover on the button, these are the styles that I want to see. So now let's go back to the original design to see how does this one would look like. I think this is how it's going to look like. Now our major concern is on the JavaScript part, so let's work with the JavaScript. So below this div I'm going to have the script tag. Within this script tag I'm going to have my JavaScript. So basically the idea here is this: when you enter something on this input box, I want to add that item to the list, isn't it so? So what is the first thing? We need to target this particular input box. For us to target that particular input box, I'm going to create a variable. Name of the variable can be anything. I'm going to say input equals. How am I going to target this particular input box? I'm sure that you have noticed here I have given an ID for that particular input field. So I'm going to use document.getElement by ID, and then I'm going to use the name of the ID. Name of the ID in this case is task input. What does that mean? With this one I will be able to reach that input field. My intention is not to reach that input field but to get the value from that input field, isn't it so? So this variable input will allow me to reach that input field. If I want to collect the value that the user is going to enter from there, I'm going to use the method name called value. So this method basically going to return the value that the user is going to enter into that particular input field. Now I want to store that one into a variable. A name of the variable can be anything, but for this particular example I'm going to use the variable name as task text. I hope this makes sense, right? Now if you could notice, when I enter something, when I click on this button, that's when I want to add that item to the list, isn't it so? So what I'm going to do, I'm going back to my HTML. Here I'm going to add an event name called onClick, because when I click on the button, that's when I want to perform this action. I'm just going to give a name for this particular function. The name of the function can be anything. Let me say in this case add task, and then I'm going to create a function here with that name, because the whole thing is going to be executed only when I click on that button. So make sure to put everything inside this particular function add task, because when I click on this button, that's when this particular function is going to be executed. So basically here this line is we are targeting the input box. Now this particular line is we are actually getting the value from that input box. Now what is next? We have to make sure that the value that we are collecting from that particular input box is not empty. For that I'm going to say if this particular variable task text should not be empty. If this is not empty, what does that mean? We need to display them like a list, isn't it so? So if this is not empty, let's say for example I'm going to put something here. Yes, this is not empty. When I click this button, I want to add this item below like a list. So for that what I'm going to do, in my HTML, after this div I'm going to create an UL, because I want to display them like a list. Within this UL I'm going to create li. Within that li I want to put those items. So for that, the first thing that I'm going to do them here is to create that li, because I want to display them like a list. For us to create any element in JavaScript, we use document.createElement method. So what element do you want to create? I want to create a list. What is the next thing? I also want to create a span tag, because I'm sure that you know when we use span, everything will be displayed on the same line. So I'm going to create a span element as well. I hope this makes sense. I'm sure that you have understood why we are creating these two. It's basically when that input field is not empty, we want to display them like a list. So for us to create them like a list, first we need to create those elements. I'm creating an li. So this li, we are going to have span tag. Within this span tag, I'm going to have that particular text. So for that, I'm going to say span is the name of the variable dot. If you want to get the text content, we use the method name called text content. The content will be coming from this particular variable task text, isn't it so? Okay, then the next thing, if you go back to the original design, this is a span, this is a text. Now what else is there apart from the text content? We also have the delete button with this particular icon. So what is next? We need to create that particular element. How do we create that particular element? We can say const delete button. How do we create delete button? In the same way, document dot create element. This time we want to create a button, isn't it so? And then what is the value for the button? The value for the button is this particular icon, isn't it so? How do we do that? The same way that we did it previously. Here we are going to say delete button dot text content. The text content for this one is a what? That delete icon. If you want to get that icon, you press Windows key together with the colon. It will give you an access to this one. Here you can type cancel, then you can pick this icon. So we have created this delete button and then we had put that icon. I hope this makes sense, isn't it so? So let's say for example, for this particular delete button, I want to add some styling. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do delete button dot. How do we add a class name in JavaScript? We use the method name called class name equals. Now give a class name for this one, delete button. So we don't have any styling for this one, so let's create that class here. So we can add the styles that you want. So this is a style that I'm going to use for this particular delete button. I have added a style to this particular delete button that I have created. This is a class. I'm sure that you can able to see the style here. When I hover, this is a style and this is some basic styling. Let me save. Let's go back and refresh. Let me put something here, Ranjan, and then when I click add, nothing is displayed. Is because we need to append this one to the UL, because everything is hanging there in the LI. We need to take everything to this particular UL for us to see the results. So for that, what am I going to do? I'm simply going to say li dot append child. First we are going to append the span to the li. We also want to li dot append child. We also append the delete button to the li. Finally, we are going to take this li to this particular UL. So let me just give an ID to this one. The name of the ID can be anything. I'm going to say task list. So now this li contains both span tag as well as the delete button. Let me take these two things to the UL here. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to say document.getElement by ID. What is the name of the ID for the UL? Now I have targeted that particular UL. Now I'm going to say append child. Who is the child here now? Li. Let me save. Let's go back and refresh. Let me put something here. Ranjan. When I click add, the item is not been added. Why is it not added? Maybe I have to remove this. These are not. The reason why it is not working, when I put the single quote, it will consider like an element. In this case, span and delete delbtn are not an element. These are variables. Let me save and refresh. Let me put something here. When I click add, now I'm sure that the item has been added, but the styling here looks pathetic, isn't it so? Let's add some styling for UL and LI. So I go up here. Before the delete button, I want to style my UL. So I have added some styling for my another list as well as for the lists items, and when I hover on that one, this is a style that I have added. Let me save. Let's go back and refresh to see how does this one would look like. I'm going to say hello now. When I click add, now it looks better. But when I click on this delete icon, the item is not being removed. The reason why this particular item is not being removed is because we did not include any event for this particular button. So for that, we are going back. So here, even here, we need to target that delete button dot on click. Let's have some arrow function and then write the action that you want to perform. What do you want to do? Li dot remove. What does that mean, li dot remove? When you click on that delete button, you want to remove the list item from the UL. Let me save. Let's go back and refresh. I'm going to put something Ranjan. Click add. When I click, now it has disappeared because previously we did not have this event. As a result, we failed to remove. Now we added that event on click, and then we are trying to detach that particular element from the list using this li.remove. Now we are able to remove that particular item. I don't know if you could notice there is one last thing that we need to do. I'm going to add. You see this Ranjan here is not going anywhere. So next time if you want to type something, you actually have to delete that one. Let's say for example you want to clear that input field. There is this built-in function that you can use. So basically the built-in function for that one is, you can say input dot value equals empty string. What it does, it makes sure that after you add the button, this box will become empty. So let me refresh. I'm going to say Ranjan. When I click add, you see this field has been cleared. It's because of this particular method input dot value. There is this other thing that I also want you to know. Let's say for example, if you don't put anything here, according to the condition that we have written them here, this particular part is not going to be executed, isn't it so? So let's say for example you're not entering anything. When you click add, nothing will happen. It's because of this particular if condition that we have. Let's say for example, instead of you leaving it blank, you're trying to use the backspace like this. In this case, this particular if condition will become true. As a result, it will add that empty space to the list. What I mean is like this. If you want to prevent this, you can use a built-in JavaScript function name called trim. What this trim method does here is simply it removes any tab space or backspace from this input field. When it removes that backspace or tab space, that particular if condition will become false. As a result, you will not be able to have such things in your list item. So now let me refresh. Let me just use the backspace. You hit add, nothing will happen. It's because of that trim function, unless if there is something here. I hope you have learned something from this tutorial. If you like this video, do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel. Thank you. Hello everyone. In this JavaScript tutorial, let's build digital clock using JavaScript. For that, let me create a simple HTML. Here I'm going to have the H2. I'm going to put the default hour and minute and seconds using these 3 zeros. Now let me include the script tag. Inside the script tag, I want to create a function. Within this function, I'm going to create an action. So since we want to create the digital clock that displays the current time, for the same, we need to know the current date. So JavaScript has this built-in function name called new date. Make sure the D is uppercase, and then I'm going to store this one into a variable. So the reason why that we are using this built-in function is to get the current date so that we can able to get the current time. Again, there is one more thing that you need to understand. The regions are different. The word is different. Regions are different. The time that you are in and the time that I am in are different. So for us to get the actual time from the region where you are, this is what we are going to use. We are going to pick this variable. We are going to use the JavaScript built-in function name called toLoco_TimeString. This method basically will give you the local time of the region where you are. So I'm going to store this one into a variable. Now the current time is stored into this particular variable name called time. Now we want to display this time in place of this H2. So for us to do that, let me just give an ID to this one. Now I'm going to use the JavaScript method document.getElementById. I want to display this current time on that particular S2. So for me to put that, I'm going to use the JavaScript method name called textContent. This one is basically putting the content. What content do you want to put them here in H2? The time, current time. Where is it stored? Into this particular variable, time. Now what is next? Since you have the function, the next thing is to call the function. Let's save and open with the browser to see how does this one works. I'm sure that you can able to see the time is 3:21:04 p.m. I'm sure that you can able to see the clock here, but these seconds are not moving. For us to make these seconds are moving, we can use the other JavaScript function name called set interval. So this set time interval would take two parameters. One is the name of the function, other one is a millisecond. In this case, 1000 millisecond is equals to 1 second. So basically we are telling the browser to display the seconds in every second. So when I go back and refresh, initially it's not moving. When I refresh, you see now it is moving. So 1000 millisecond is 1 second. Now every second is showing here. Now the way that is looking is not so good. Let me add some style sheet. I'm not going to teach you how to add a style sheet because I'm going to add something basic. I'm sure that you can able to see I have added a very basic style sheet. Now let's just open our browser to see how does this one would look like. I think this is looking better than the way that it was looking before, right? Nothing fancy, just a few style sheet that I've added. I hope you have learned something from this simple project. There is nothing big here. It's a very basic project, but an interesting one for a start. This marks the end of this particular tutorial. Let's meet in the next tutorial. By the way, if you like this video, do not forget to hit the like button. Hello everyone. Let's create this smiley range using JavaScript. I can click anywhere on this particular screen for me to have this smiley rain. So this is what we are going to create in this particular tutorial. Let's get started. I'm going to open my text editor. Let me have my basic HTML. Here I just want to have a H1. Here let me just copy this title and paste them here. I want to have my JavaScript. So inside the script tag, remember I told you I can click anywhere on the screen, not necessarily using a button. So for me to select the entire screen, I'm going to use this JavaScript method name called document. From the HTML, I can select anywhere on the screen by using this body method. Here I want to add an add event listener method. This add event listener method, I'm going to add an event name called click because I want to click anywhere on the screen. Now I want to have this callback function to perform the action. Here I want to create 30 emojis. For me to create 30 emojis, let me use for loop. After creating these 30 emojis using the for loop, what I am going to do, I want to create or make a new little box. In this case, that little box can be a div that will hold only one emoji. For that, I am going to create a div. I want to give a name for this variable as emojis. We know that we use document.create element to create any element. The element that I want to create them here is a div. So this one will make a new little box. In this case is a div that will hold only one emoji. So for this emoji, I want to add some CSS. For that, I'm going to pick this variable. I'm going to use the method name as class list dot add to this emoji. Let me add this CSS up here. These are the CSS that I have added for that particular emoji that I created, where I have stored them into the small little box. In this case is a div. Now I also want to have some random emojis so that when I want to bring that emoji range, I can be using them. So for that, I'm going to use const. I'm going to have an array. So within this array, I want to have a different emojis. You can just copy paste it from somewhere. These are the emojis that I want to use in this particular project. You can use any emojis that you would want to use in this particular project. I've just selected these. And then the next thing is we need to randomly select an emoji from this emoji list, and then we have to put that emoji into this box that we created. For that, I'm going to use math.random function. So I'm going to say, so why do we have this particular line? Basically, we want to choose a random emojis from the list and put it inside the box. So we are going to randomly select and then we are going to put it inside this box that we created. And then the next thing is we want to pick a random spot from left to right across the screen, so that when we have that emoji rain, it would look better. So for the same, this is what I am going to do. So this is basically picking a random spot from the left to right across the screen. We also want to give each emoji a random speed for how long it floats. So for that I'm going to use this line. After that we have to make the emojis drift slightly left or right as it moves. So for that I'm going to use this particular line of code. I think we are almost done with the JavaScript part where we can have the emojis range. So the next part is to work with the CSS so that the animations can work together with this JavaScript to make it look better. So for that I'm going to add these keyframes to my project so that I can apply those animations. In this case I have given a name for the animation as float down to have that emojis range. So let me add the keyframes here. So I have added these keyframes. I'm sure that you have noticed I'm using some global variables. So within my JavaScript, I'm going to utilize these global variables to have that animation so that I can have the smiley rain on my screen. So let me make use of these global variables that I have in my CSS within this JavaScript to have the smiley rain. So here I'm going to say emoji dot style dot set property. Here I'm going to say dash dash left is a global variable for the left side. Now I have incorporated those animations that I have in my CSS into my JavaScript so that it can nicely float around on the screen. Now this particular line that I have is basically gives each emoji a random size to make things look more fun. So it will actually assign a random size to each emojis that we have. Remember, we have added about 30 emojis, so it will give each emojis a different size randomly to make it look more fun. And what is next? We just have to append everything to our screen so that we can be able to see the result. So for the same, I'm going to use document.body.append child method. Here, what do you want to append? The same emojis. That's it, we are good. Let's just open this one using a browser to see how does this one would look like. When I just click here, let me refresh, nothing is happening. So what did I miss? Let me just check. Okay, I'm sure that you have noticed this is not random, it's a random. Let me save and then let's open our browser again, refresh. I'm sure that you can able to see the smiley rain now. I did not add any styling for the body section. That's the reason why you are seeing the design like the way that you are seeing. Let me add some styling to the body so that it can look better than the way that it's looking now. So I'm going to select my body section and H2 that I have to add some styling so that it can look better. So here I'm going to add some styling for the body section as well as the H1 that I have. For the body section is just basic. I'm sure that you know these things, right? Even for the H1 is just the basic. The rest are just the same, the one that we had. I think this is a simple one, right? So basically here we are making sure that I can click anywhere on the screen. We are creating 30 smileys. We are just picking only one. Here we have the random array. Now we are picking one from this random array and then storing them into the single div. So this one here is basically pick a random spot from left to right across the screen. The next one here is give each emojis a random speed for how long it floats. And then the next thing here is make the emoji drift slightly left or right as it moves. And then this one is basically applying the animations using the CSS global variable that we have up there. And then this one here is basically give each emoji a random size to make things look more fun. And then we are appending these things to our HTML body. As a result, when we go there and refresh, you click anywhere on the screen, you will see each emojis have got different size and they are falling nicely on the screen. This is how we can create emoji range using simple JavaScript. If you like this video guys, please do give a thumbs up and subscribe the channel. Thank you.